Welcome into Texans Today. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs. Now, I made this video maybe about 30, 45 minutes ago, and since then, we did have some Texans breaking news, so I wanted to slap it on the front before you watch this video where I'm going to break down three major questions around this Houston Texans team going into that Monday Night Football game up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and this might help answer one of the questions that we have, because my first question, I'm talking about the safety room, but we had some Texans roster moves happen today. Darrell Taylor, the defensive end, was activated off of IR, and in a corresponding move, the Texans went ahead and waived Calen Wallace. Now, I went ahead and tweeted out already earlier, if you haven't already, make sure to follow me at Jeremy Chuggs on Twitter, that I believe the Texans will re-sign Calen Wallace to the practice squad and then elevate him for that game up against the Steelers in the wild card round. But maybe we see Jalen Reed come back from injury as well. I'll keep you up to date with the latest Texans news and rumors all week long. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and let's get in to my three major questions around the Texans going into this weekend.
Getting ready for some football, some Texans Today party.
Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's program, three major questions surrounding the Texans heading into this wild card matchup up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to break down all of the questions that we have surrounding this team and, how we can probably answer some of those questions facing Pittsburgh this weekend. Now, I've done it every single Tuesday video, and we've won 9 straight. So I'm not going to change a thing. Don't you jinx it. Go down, hit that thumbs up icon, like the video. Let's get to 600 likes. Every video that I've made on a Tuesday that we've gotten to 600 likes, we've won that game. So I'm not saying liking the video equals a win this weekend, but producer JD, I'm also not saying that. So go down, hit that thumbs up icon, and let's beat the Steelers this Monday night. Now, let's get going with our first question that I have for the Houston Texans. Who's going to start next to Calen Bullock as that safety up against the Pittsburgh Steelers? Because we know the Texans, they like to run 5 defensive back sets where Jalen Petrie is that, nickel star role, like the pseudo third linebacker that the Texans like to run. But it's a big question mark of who's going to be starting next to Calen Bullock on the back end. Now, the past couple of games, it's been Calen Wallace, and he's been up and down, right? Up against the Colts, it's a little harder to tell because all the backups were in, but, not the best game from Calen Wallace. He had an interception that hit off of his face mask that should have been an easy pick for Houston. But the game prior, he was actually really good, right? I thought he did really well in that Week 17 game up against the LA Chargers. So will he be the one to get the start up against the Steelers? Or could it be Myles Bryant? He's also made a couple of starts this season and last season for this Texans team. And, he's a guy who DeMeco Ryans, his coaching staff trusts. They move him around to different positions. He's a backup safety, backup nickel, backup corner. He's a kind of jack of all trades. I don't want to say master of none, but kind of that kind of cliche. Also a really good special teamer for this team. So could we see Myles Bryant on the back end for this Texans squad? Or could it be rookie Jalen Reed? He got placed on IR after suffering a forearm injury in Week 13. And, people from his camp have told me he is trying to play. He's trying to get going for this playoff run, even though he was placed on IR for the second time this season. But will he be able to go out there and possibly start for this Texans squad? Right now, I'm going to keep it as Calen Wallace as the starting safety next to Calen Bullock and then Jalen Petrie right there. Obviously, you have Kamari Lassiter, Derek Stingley Jr. as your starting corners, but it's going to be a big question mark leading up until game time throughout this week, seeing the injury report to see if Jalen Reed's going to be back, and then also will Calen Wallace get the start once again at that safety position. I want to know from you, though. Leave a comment down below. What is your biggest concern going into this playoff game? Let me know down below, maybe your biggest question, biggest concern in your eyes. I'll let you know my biggest concern coming up after this YouTube ad break, but go down in the comment section right now. Let me know, what is your biggest concern surrounding this Texans squad? Mine is around the offensive line, and most notably, picking up blitzes with the Pittsburgh Steelers defensive front. I think that is my biggest concern, and I wouldn't be surprised looking in the comment section right now if that's all y'all's biggest concern as well, because the Steelers, they are top 10 in the NFL in terms of blitz rate this season, blitzing opposing quarterbacks at a rate of 29.5%. And they have great pass rushers, right? TJ Watt, even though he suffered a lung injury, a punctured lung, about a month ago. And then you also have Alex Highsmith, really good pass rushers on the outside, and then they like to send those blitzes up the middle with their linebackers. Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson, Nick Herbig, all guys that they like to bring on blitzes up the middle and, run different stunts, different concepts on that defensive line, defensive front. And the Texans O-line, they've gotten better this year, but they still struggle to pick up blitzes, pick up stunts from opposing defenses. So this is my biggest concern around the Texans in this matchup up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, making sure that CJ Stroud is upright and making sure that he isn't, having to let go of balls or throw bad passes because he's getting pressure instantly in his face. And that kind of leads to my next biggest question surrounding this Texans squad, which I'll tell you that and one more question I have around this team coming up in just a moment. But first, a word from our sponsor. Couldn't do today's show if it wasn't for our amazing friends over at Prize Picks. I love Prize Picks. So does my guy JD, and I know you will too. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Whether you're starting a new routine or making player picks for the first time, trying something new can be hard. But in life and on Prize Picks, it always feels good to be right. With high-pressure playoff matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never stops. And Prize Picks lets you take control. Do you miss fantasy football? Prize Picks lets you play it every single week. Pick your favorite players and win when they hit their projections. And it's super simple. Just pick more or less on at least two player stats. If you get your picks right, you can cash in, and it's now available in all 50 states. For this matchup, this is my lineup that I'm rolling with. Aaron Rodgers, I'm going the more on the interception. CJ Stroud, more on the passing touchdowns. Jaylen Warren, I'm going less on his rush yards and more on Will Anderson, his sacks. You can use my lineup or go ahead and make your own. Join the millions of users that sign up for America's #1 fantasy sports app today. Download the Prize Picks app. Use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. All that information down in the comments and description of today's show. All right, question number 2 regarding this Texans team facing the Pittsburgh Steelers. What will the starting offensive line look like up against Pittsburgh? A lot of question marks because there's been some injuries the past couple weeks, and we'll have to see who ends up being the starting 5 for this Texans team. As I mentioned right before talking about Prize Picks, the Steelers, they lead, top 10 in blitz rate. Texans, we need to have that blitz pickup. Will it be Trent Brown, though, the right tackle for this Texans squad? He sustained a knee injury up against the Raiders in Week 16, and he's missed the past 2 weeks up against the Chargers and up against the Colts. Will he start at right tackle? Because if he does, that simplifies everything. I think you go back to your OG lineup, the one that you ran for most of the season, right? Where he's right tackle, Ursay's the left tackle, and then you have Titus Howard, Jake Andrews, and Ed Ingram. But if he's out, then that's where things get a little shaky because, in my opinion, I think Blake Fisher has played well for this Texans squad, stepping in at different positions. He stepped in at left tackle up against the Chargers when Ursay wasn't able to go, and he's been the 6th offensive lineman, somebody that the Texans have used heavily in this offensive scheme throughout the 2025 NFL season. And I thought, his time with starting up against the Chargers, he played pretty well. And then also you have Jarrett Patterson, who has stepped in at left guard whenever the team has needed, whenever they've bumped Titus Howard out to right tackle. They usually end up putting Jarrett Patterson in at that left guard spot. So that could be an option if Trent Brown isn't able to go. In my opinion, I think the best bet for the Texans, if Trent Brown isn't able to go, would be starting Blake Fisher at right tackle and keeping Titus Howard at left guard, because against the Steelers, I think you're going to need to run the rock. And I think the best front 5 to be able to run the football is with Titus Howard at left guard rather than Jarrett Patterson. I do like Jarrett Patterson, but I do think he's more of a natural center. He's not as good of a run blocker as you would want from a left guard. And then Blake Fisher at right tackle. And then you're able to kind of use extra linemen as that 6th offensive lineman. So that's what I would personally do if Trent Brown isn't able to go. But like I said, we're going to have to keep an eye on those injury reports throughout this week. And if you want more keys to victory, if you want more of a preview style video, I actually dropped one on the channel yesterday. This is what the thumbnail looks like. If you want to go ahead and watch that video, you can right now. And this was the sub battle yesterday. I have not been able to update the numbers, but I do know we have caught up to the Pittsburgh Steelers. We are still a little bit behind, but we're in a sub battle this week. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, help me out. Help us beat our Steelers host, Jack Sperry. I want to make sure the Texans win on and off the field this week. So if you haven't already, make sure hit that subscribe button. All right, last question that I have. Will the Texans offense and CJ Stroud be able to turn it on in the playoffs? And it's no secret that the defense is the strength of this team. We all know it. We have a top 3, if not the top defense in the National Football League. But I said it in that preview, and I'll say it again today. This is a prove-it game for CJ Stroud. A lot of haters, a lot of doubters out there. I have Jags fans in my comments and in my mentions saying Trevor Lawrence is a way better quarterback than CJ Stroud. He is the best quarterback in the AFC South by far. And I don't agree with that. I really don't. I think CJ Stroud has taken, strides this year. I think really before he got injured in that Broncos game, he was looking good up against the top 5 defense in Denver. And I think, whenever he's on, he's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. So a big prove-it game for CJ Stroud. A big prove-it game also for Nico Collins. Can he prove his wide receiver 1 status? A lot of people, especially, I'm here at Chat Sports. We have channels for all other 31 NFL teams. All the other guys are like, oh, is Nico Collins really he's more of a wide receiver too. He's a really good wide receiver too, is what I'm being told around in the offense. I don't agree. I think Nico is a wide receiver 1, and he can prove that again this week up against this Steelers team. Can he, the Texans, they took precautionary measures. They made sure he wasn't playing in that Week 18 game up against the Indianapolis Colts. Can he prove them right and say, hey, I'm an alpha dog, I'm a wide receiver 1, and show his stuff up against Pittsburgh? And then the rookie Woody Marks, can he keep it going? He has been awesome his rookie season. The 4th-round pick out of USC has proven a lot of, doubters wrong. Whenever they drafted him, a lot of people were like, oh, horrible pick. You go back, and it's on the channel. You can see right after he was drafted, I said Woody Marks would be the steal of this draft for this Texans team. And that looks to be the case. He has been really good, and especially in the 3rd and 4th quarter of games, closing it out for this Texans team, he has been awesome. And I know the numbers aren't great for this Texans offense in terms of rankings, but they're still 13th in points per game. Not bad, right? Like, if you look at some of the advanced analytics, like 3rd down percentage and red zone percentage, not as great. The Texans really good in terms of not giving the football away. But, at the end of the day, this Texans offense builds off of this Texans defense. So if this Texans defense can put them in good field position, and then they can just execute, right? If they can, I know we don't like the field goals, but Kaimi, that's going to be a big key to this game. If he can hit field goals, hey, that's the reason why the Texans beat the Colts in Week 18, because he was automatic in that game. And the only reason the Steelers are in the playoffs is off of a missed field goal from the Ravens kicker. So if we can take advantage of those opportunities, put points on the board, and keep on stacking it up with this offense, I think the Texans walk out of Pittsburgh with a dub on Monday Night Football. And other key guys that need to step up on this offense include and are not limited to Dalton Schultz. He's been really good. One of his best years with the Texans this year at tight end. Then you look at the wide receiver trio, Jaden Higgins, Jalen Knoll, Christian Kirk. I forgot to add Xavier Hutchinson, but you can add Hutch into this key guys to step up as well, because he was awesome in Week 18 up against the Indianapolis Colts. The backup tight end, Cade Stover. I'm looking at offensive lineman, Jake Andrews, Ariante Ursary. Need those guys to step up. And then the rest of the running back room, whether that's Nick Chubb, Jawar Jordan, British Brooks, need some of those guys to step up to help Woody Marks in the backfield. I think those 3 questions are the main ones for this Texans squad, but guys, I still feel good about our chances going into Pittsburgh on Monday night. I think this team is well coached. I think this team is very talented. And I think this team has the will and determination to move forward in this NFL playoffs. And they can prove it on Monday night, wild card game up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, that's all I have for you on today's show, folks. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, you can do so at Jeremy Chugs. My DMs are always open. And if you made it to the end of the video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for free Texans content all year